Hi and hello. My name is Cass, and welcome to my channel where I read a lot of books and I talk about them. We are entering the final month of the summer, August, so let's look at the books I plan on reading in the coming month. So first up, we have So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole. This is actually my second Camilla Cole book since I read an Arcane Inheritance a couple months ago. Unfortunately, I didn't like that book very much. If you saw that wrap up, you know that I wasn't a big fan of that one. But I am hoping that I will like this one more. In any case, this book is about Farron. She is a young woman who was blessed by the gods, and she saved her island from invasion when she was only like 12 years old. Now, 5 years later, she's 17, she has all these powers, and she has nothing to do with them. When she is invited to this peace summit, she assumes that she's just going to be there to perform a few party tricks and then leave. However, her sister ends up bonding with a dragon from the enemy kingdom. As a result, the gods tell Farron that the only way to break that bond is to kill her sister. Farron, of course, is determined to do anything but that, and both she and her sister have to make choices that shape the rest of their lives. I really am hoping I like this book more than I liked Arcane Inheritance. It's part of a duology. I didn't realize that until I had added it to the list and I was looking up everything up for this, TBR. So I will, of course, try to read the sequel during, this time after I read this. And my hope is that the two books have a good, well-wrapped-up ending, which is not how I felt about Arcane Inheritance, so fingers crossed. So next up, we have a short story collection, Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Marie Machado. This is a collection of short stories exploring all the way that women are viewed in society and the violence that is often inflicted upon them. As with all short story collections, it's kind of hard to describe any real plot because everything is kind of disconnected. But I am pretty excited about this one. I listened to Mikado's nonfiction book about her own abusive queer relationship a while back, and I really enjoyed the way she wrote and structured that book. So I'm hoping this collection will invoke a lot of the same enjoyment, if, discomfort as well, given the subject matter. Next up is another recommendation from my sister. Unsurprisingly, honestly, when I did this, I was like, I'm gonna read 100 books, give me recommendations. My sister was like, allow me to give you a list. So that's why throughout the year you've seen so many of me going, yeah, this is from my sister. My sister also loves books, and she likes to also give me books that she likes to see if I'll like them too. So I do the same thing to her. It's mutual. In any case, this one is probably going to be fun and maybe a little silly. It's called The Alpha of Mortal Flesh. It's by Ben Alderson. This is technically the third book in a series of standalone romances, but it seems like you don't have to have read the others. So since this is the one that my sister recommended me, this is the one I shall read. This book is about Rory. He is a man who is married to the head of the Crimson Guard. Unfortunately, this man also abuses him horribly, making Rory not only have to hide bruises, but also have to hide his innate magic, because Rory is a witch, and that puts him in danger. However, one day he meets Calix, I believe it's pronounced. He is a werewolf who's trying to just secure his brother's safe return to him. Unsure if the Crimson Guard has kidnapped his brother or if someone else has, but regardless, he thinks that Rory is the key to getting his brothers back safe, but getting what they both want might end up with a powerful monster unleashed on the streets. I presume this book will have the usual romance tropes, along with what seems like an interesting plot. So I'm hoping the tropes part is executed well. Over time, admittedly, I've become somewhat more picky with my romances, a little bit more critical of them, probably because I've read so many at this point, but I'm hoping that this will be fun. We'll see how it turns out. Then we have my self-assigned nonfiction book for the summer season, even though it obviously isn't the only one that I read this summer. But I'm going to be reading Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. This is one of the nonfiction books I picked completely without recommendation from any of the booktubers I watch or anything else, purely because I wanted to make sure that I read at least one nonfiction book per season, and this one seemed to have an interesting subject matter. And I take the advice to heart in terms of nonfiction that when reading nonfiction, you should pick subjects you're interested in, at least at first. I have always really struggled reading nonfiction. I've never found it as interesting as fiction, but luckily this year with what I have read, my mind is slowly being changed. I've enjoyed all of the nonfiction books that I've picked up so far, so we're getting there. Men Who Hate Women talks about the extremist communities of men who just despise women. Incels, pickup artists, men's rights activists, and, many more. It discusses the rhetoric used by these groups, how it connects to other extreme groups like white supremacists, how young boys are pulled into it, and where it pops up even in terms of like the surface level world outside of the internet spaces that are pretty frequented by these groups. Given the state of the world, especially the United States right now, I think it's a good time to read this book. These groups are pushing further and further into the public space. They're spreading their awful rhetoric further, and it's a really scary time to be a woman, in a lot of ways. So as much as this book is probably going to be heavy and uncomfortable to read for me, I also think it's probably going to be a good read, and certainly topical. On a lighter note, the next 3 books continue my reading of Carissa Broadbent's Crown of Nyxia series, with the next novella and the next duology. First, Slaying the Vampire Conqueror, which is the novella in between the first duology and the second duology. Fun fact about this book, I actually picked it up before I knew anything about the Crowns of Nyxia series. I was like, ooh, this looks funny. I mean, haha, Slaying the Vampire Conqueror. So I picked it up, I think, on a sale or something. You can kind of see where I pulled the sticker off. But so yeah, I just thought it'd be fun, and then I realized it said a Crowns of Nyxia novel, and I was like, oh no, that's not good. So hence, honestly, this book and me buying it is kind of why I ended up reading the whole series, because I'm like, well, I read the book, or I bought the book, I might as well read the rest of it. Anyway, all of that being said, from what I can tell so far, these characters don't seem to show up in the main series yet. I haven't seen anything about how they show up in the next, duology, but I don't know. I haven't read them yet. That's why we're doing a TBR. In any case, this particular novella is about Selena. She is a young woman who is a part of a cult that is following the goddess of fate. We actually, minor spoilers for the last duology of this series, we actually talked more, or got to see her, the goddess of fate, in that novel, which was interesting. However, this involves a cult following that goddess specifically. So, if you know anything about cults usually aren't a good thing. So, I don't know. But yeah, Selena has, given up everything. She's given up her sight. She's given up, her life, her family, everything to become, a part of this cult, to be a warrior for this cult. Her original goal is that she is supposed to kill their land's, tyrannical ruler. However, Atreus shows up on their shores. He is a vampire conqueror. Where could we have gotten that from? But when he shows up, she gets given a new task, and her task is to infiltrate the ranks of his army and kill him. Of course, because this is a romance book, things get complicated when she falls in love with him, and she has to choose between love and her duty. The usual, a fairly used trope. It gives you some good angst in there. And then, after that, we have the Shadowborn duet. That is the second duology in this series. This one features Mishk. She was one of the side characters in the Nightborn duology, and she is sentenced to death for killing a prince of the House of Shadow. This is a subject that happens in the Nightborn duet, so consequences of things we saw in prior books. However, she is saved by another Shadow House prince, and her punishment is changed. Instead, she has to, journey into the underworld to try and resurrect the god of death. In her opinion, this is, so much worse. for reasons I'm sure will be explained in the book. However, Mishk's whole thing is that before she was a vampire, she was a human who followed one of the, like, main pantheon gods, and those gods, like, shun the vampires. So she has, like, lost connection to her god. However, she is commanded by said sun god to follow through with this journey, except with a caveat that she betrays the shadow prince that saved her at the very end by killing the death god she's been sent to resurrect. Because this is a romance, much like with slaying the vampire conqueror, they fall in love and the choice becomes really hard. Judging by the Nightborn duet, I'm guessing, like, some betrayals will happen, is my assumption. But that's just me going off of the first one. Maybe this won't happen. I have no clue. I liked the first duology fine for being romantasy. I think I gave them, like, 4 stars. 4-star is kind of becoming my 3-star. I promise next year I will actually have a system. I'll have a system. I'm already thinking about the system. In any case, I assume this duology will kind of be the same vibes. There's not really a lot of romantasy in my list outside of these 3 books, or really, like, last month. July, I didn't really I think maybe I had one romantasy book, that as of the time of this recording, I haven't gotten to it yet. But, I think hopefully all of that, like, will help cleanse my palate a bit, and enjoy these for what they are. Like, I think I talked about it in, like, May, when I originally read the Nightborn duet, that, like, I'm kind of getting burnt out on romantasy in general. It's everywhere, and some of them sound interesting, but it's kind of gotten to the point where they've all blended together for me. So, in a lot of cases, I've kind of, like, not wanted to read them as much. But I think hopefully my palate is cleansed enough that shouldn't be a problem here. In any case, these are not as much as I've talked about them, these are not the final books of the month. To wrap up the month, I will be reading Wilder Girls by Rory Power. In my continued enjoyment of queer horror books, this is another one in that vein. So, Wilder Girls is about Hetty. She is a teenager who attends the Raxter School for Girls, and a year and a half before the events of the story, the school was quarantined due to being hit with something called the Tox. The Tox slowly killed all of the teachers and the adults one by one, but when it infected the teenagers, it, like, twisted their bodies into, like, strange things and, like, mutated them. They've been cut off from the world, and they've basically just been trying to survive while they're waiting for a cure from, presumably, the government. However, Hetty's presumably friend, maybe girlfriend, the synopsis does not specify, Bayat, I think is how you pronounce it, goes missing, and Hetty, heads into the infected woods and beyond the fence to try and find her. I've said this before, I'm really enjoying horror books recently, especially queer horror. It's really up there with Don May for me right now, apparently. So this one is right up my alley. It sounds like it's going to be, like, pretty heavy body horror. I think I remember seeing some reviews that said it was pretty heavy body horror. So I'm interested in that. I don't read a lot of body horror, so I'm hoping that'll be fun. Hazelthorne kind of had it, I guess, but both Hazelthorne and Don't Let the Forest In are really more, like, botanical horror with, like, elements of body horror. I think this one's gonna be, like, full-blown body horror. Like, we're talking about a thing that, like, mutates bodies. Like, that, it's kind of a given. In any case, I'm hoping that it'll be a fun book to end August with. Fun being, a relative term. In any case, that is the end of our list for the month. I have 8 books planned, 9 if we count the sequel to Let Them Burn, or So Let Them Burn. Hopefully we make good progress through it. I have admittedly been getting slower with reading my TBR books recently, but it's mostly because I'm, like, very interested in all the Don May that I keep gaining. In any case, but I will get through my TBR books. We'll get there. I am chugging along, slowly but surely. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!